The ship hummed through the vast emptiness of space, its engines steady, carrying Eli Harper further from the comfort of Arendar. Though he had been thrilled at leaving home, the reality of the galaxy was far more complicated than he had imagined. Planets were no longer just fields of crops and calm skies. They were places of politics, power, and hidden dangers. Yet Eli faced it all with the same wide-eyed curiosity that had always guided him. The strange object he carried, which the crew now referred to as the artifact, pulsed quietly in its containment field. Eli had spent hours trying to understand it, gently touching its smooth surfaces, listening to the faint hum that sometimes seemed to respond to his thoughts. It was as if the weapon recognized him. "Eli," Leora said one evening as she observed him in the ship's lab, "you need to be careful. That artifact is not just a machine. It is a weapon created by the Valorians, a civilization lost long before humans even appeared in this galaxy. Few beings understand it, and fewer can control it." Eli blinked. "Control it? I don't even know how to use it properly. I just touch it, and sometimes things happen." Leora smiled faintly. "Exactly. That unpredictability is what makes it dangerous, and what makes it terrifying to others." Eli's brow furrowed. "Terrifying me? I'm just a human." Leora shook her head. "Humans are underestimated, Eli. That is why your kind is dangerous. You do not think like the rest of us. You do not follow rules or expectations. That naivety, it can make you more effective than armies." Eli laughed nervously, unsure whether to feel proud or afraid. He had never thought of himself as dangerous. He just wanted adventure. Yet deep inside, he began to understand that adventure had its own risks. The crew soon entered a densely populated star system called Valara Prime. It was a hub of trade, politics, and intelligence. The moment their ship entered orbit, they detected multiple fleets scanning the system. Ships of all shapes and sizes moved carefully, as if waiting for something or someone. "That's strange," muttered Corin, a human-like engineer from another world. "There's no war scheduled." "Why so many fleets?" "They're searching for the artifact," Leora said quietly. "It's already becoming known that a human carries a Valorian weapon." Eli's stomach tightened. He had not realized that merely holding the object could put him in danger, but his curiosity would not let him hide. He wanted to see, to understand, to learn how the galaxy reacted to something new. Their first stop was a market planet, where Eli hoped to gather information. The planet's surface was crowded with alien species of all shapes, colors, and sizes. Vendors sold strange foods, glowing trinkets, and devices that hummed with faint energy. Eli marveled at it all, forgetting momentarily the danger that followed him. As they walked, the artifact began to hum softly. Eli instinctively placed a hand on it. The hum grew louder, forming patterns of light that wrapped around him. Passers-by stopped and stared, some in awe, others in fear. Eli's simple human curiosity had created a spectacle. And once again, without meaning to, he drew attention. A group of alien scouts, this time far more organized than the first, observed him from the shadows. They whispered to each other, their voices urgent. "The human carries it," one said. "He does not even know the danger he brings." Eli's ears twitched at the sound, though he could not understand the words. He tightened his grip on the artifact, confused but not afraid. He felt a strange connection to it, a subtle guide that seemed to suggest safety. Though not every path was clear, the first major test of the artifact's power came unexpectedly. A small transport vessel, carrying civilians, was attacked by a group of space pirates. They aimed to steal the ship and its valuable cargo. Eli, walking near the docks, froze at the sound of alarms. Without thinking, he pressed his hand against the artifact. A pulse of energy shot into the sky. Invisible to the pirates but strong enough to push their ship backward. Engines sputtered, weapons misfired, and the pirates' coordinated attack fell apart. They retreated in confusion, leaving the transport ship unharmed. The crowd erupted in amazement. Eli, meanwhile, stumbled backward, blinking in surprise. I didn't even aim," he exclaimed. "That's why you're terrifying," Leora said quietly. "You do not think in the patterns the galaxy expects?" The artifact responds to you, and the combination is something no one can predict. Word of the event spread quickly. News feeds across multiple systems broadcasted the story. Naive human halts pirate attack with unknown weapon. Soon, rumors began to exaggerate, describing Eli as a force capable of leveling fleets with a gesture. The galaxy's leaders grew uneasy, wondering how a single human could wield such unpredictable power. Back on the ship, Eli struggled to understand the artifact. It communicated through visions and faint whispers, images of ancient battles, forgotten worlds, and advanced technology far beyond contemporary understanding. Sometimes the visions were clear, showing him paths or solutions. Other times they were confusing, leaving him unsure which action to take. He spent hours every day learning to interact with it, discovering that patience and calmness seemed to strengthen the connection. The artifact in turn began to stabilize, its hum less erratic and more harmonious. Eli felt a sense of partnership forming, as if the weapon recognized his intentions and trusted his heart. But the galaxy's reaction did not wait. Alien factions, from ruthless warlords to ambitious empires, began mobilizing. They sent scouts, spies, and small fleets to track Eli's ship. Each attempt to capture him failed, often in unexpected ways. Pirates were scattered, scout ships disabled without harm, and alliances crumbled under the sheer unpredictability of the human and his artifact. In private, Eli's crew discussed what to do. "We can't keep running forever," Corrin said. "If they find out how powerful the artifact really is, they will come with full fleets." "I know," Leora replied. "But right now, Eli is our only key. We have to help him learn. His naivety is his strength. It allows him to think outside the limits of experience. And that is something no one can control." Eli overheard the conversation. He felt a mix of pride and fear. He was proud that his simple human perspective could make a difference. But fear settled in his stomach as he realized the galaxy was full of beings who would stop at nothing to claim or destroy the artifact. Days later, while navigating a dense asteroid field, Eli had another unintentional display of the artifact's power. The ship was caught in a sudden ambush by a small fleet of bounty hunters. The crew prepared for battle, weapons ready, shields up. Eli, unsure of what to do, pressed his hand to the artifact. A wave of energy surged outward, subtly altering the asteroid's trajectories. Rocks collided with the bounty hunters' ships, forcing them to retreat without a single life lost. The crew stared in awe. "It's incredible," Leora said softly. "The artifact can destroy fleets, or protect them." And Eli, he doesn't even realize the full power he holds. Eli felt a mixture of excitement and guilt. He had never wanted to hurt anyone. Yet, somehow, the artifact seemed to know the difference between danger and harm, protecting innocence while neutralizing threats. As the ship continued its journey, Eli's understanding of the artifact grew. He learned that his simplicity, his lack of preconceptions, allowed him to see solutions others could not. The galaxy had always valued experience, strategy, and planning. Eli's approach was different. He acted on instinct, curiosity, and morality. And in that difference lay a terrifying potential. By the time the ship left Valara Prime, Eli had begun to grasp a truth he had never expected. The artifact was not just a weapon. It was a partnership, a living remnant of a lost civilization, waiting for someone to understand it. And somehow, against all odds, it had chosen him. Yet even as he marveled at the connection, the galaxy grew restless. The more stories of his actions spread, the more powerful factions began to prepare. Warlords whispered in fear, empires debated strategy, and spies watched every move. A human, naive, and untrained, had become a symbol of something larger, force that could not be predicted, could not be controlled, and might very well change the galaxy forever. Eli Harper did not yet understand the weight of what he carried. He did not yet know the challenges ahead. But he did know one thing. For the first time in his life, he felt truly alive. And the artifact pulsed softly as if agreeing adventure had begun. Alara Dune stood inside the asteroid barn, clutching the small, humming jar of Viridian starleaf. The shop looked calm, almost ordinary, yet something about the air made her pulse quicken. The faint glow of floating objects reflected on the metal shelves, casting shadows that seemed to twist and shift. She could swear she heard the faintest whisper of movement, as though the store itself breathed. The cashier, who had seemed so ordinary before, was nowhere in sight. Ilara's instincts told her that she should leave, but curiosity had already taken root. Carefully, she set the jar on a nearby counter. The vibration it gave off was stronger now, like a tiny heartbeat. "I need to understand you," she murmured. Her fingers traced the smooth surface. The hum pulsed in time with her words. Then, without warning, the jar tilted slightly, as if nudged by an unseen hand. Alara jumped back. "This isn't normal," she whispered. She had faced dangerous situations in her life pirate skirmishes, rogue drones, even asteroid collisions, but nothing had felt like this. This was subtle, intelligent, undeniably strange. She decided to take the jar back to her freighter and run tests in a controlled environment. Her freighter, the Celestial Wanderer, was small but equipped with scientific tools for just such an occasion. Sensors, analyzers, and a compact lab bench made it a perfect place to study anomalies as she walked through the station corridors. She noticed other oddities. A small maintenance droid she passed froze mid-step, its lights flickering. A human trader's datapad displayed random numbers instead of the usual inventory information. Even the lighting seemed unstable, dimming and brightening at irregular intervals. Ilara frowned. Could the jar really be causing all this? She had purchased the spice just like any other, but somehow it had triggered something unexpected. Her heartbeat quickened. Back aboard the freighter, she carefully placed the jar on the lab bench. The hum was stronger now, almost like it resonated through the floor itself. Ilara activated her sensors, scanning for energy fluctuations, radiation, or any form of matter distortion. The readings were unusual. Small gravitational anomalies appeared near the jar, shifting objects by a few centimeters. Tiny metallic tools, left nearby, had moved slightly. It was as if the jar had a field of influence, controlled, deliberate, intelligent. Ilara ran a series of experiments. She left small probes near the jar, recorded their movements, and tried to isolate the effect. Hours passed, and the anomalies grew more noticeable. A tiny wrench floated a few millimeters above the counter before dropping slowly, almost gently, to the surface. The hum pulsed like a heartbeat with each movement. "This is alive," Ilara whispered to herself. She didn't mean alive in the conventional sense. But there was a pattern to the jar's actions. Quiet intelligence she could not explain. The situation escalated the next day. Communications across the station began to fail intermittently. Screens blinked with random data. Robots acted erratically, pausing mid-task or moving objects seemingly at random. Even the station's security cameras displayed flickering images, sometimes showing fleeting silhouettes that were not there a moment before. Ilara realized that the disturbances were connected to the jar. Every time it vibrated, anomalies appeared nearby. She made the decision to investigate the asteroid barn further, but this time with caution. She needed to find the source, or at least understand the nature of the object. She returned to the shop under the guise of a casual visitor. Orion's spire bustled around her, oblivious to the growing anomalies. As she entered the barn, the air felt heavier. The hum of the jar seemed louder, almost echoing through the walls. The shelves of floating objects twisted gently. As if acknowledging her presence, she moved cautiously toward the back of the store. Where there had once been shelves filled with strange artifacts, there were now faint glowing marks. The floor beneath her vibrated ever so slightly. Shadows danced along the walls in shapes that made her skin prickle. Then she noticed something extraordinary. Tiny creatures, barely visible, moved among the shelves. They were small, insect-like, but their movement was intelligent and deliberate. They seemed to interact with the floating objects and with the energy in the air. Ilara gasped quietly. "What are you?" she asked, The creatures paused, almost as if they understood her words. Then they vanished, leaving only the faint glow behind. Her mind raced. The jar, the anomalies, the strange creatures, it all pointed to something bigger than a simple spice. Perhaps the asteroid barn itself was more than it seemed. Perhaps it was a gateway or a containment device for something alien. Alara left the store quickly, carrying the jar. Outside, the station appeared normal again, but she could feel the hum vibrating faintly against her skin. She made a plan. She would set up a containment field aboard the freighter and monitor the jar closely. She would also send discreet scans of the station to see if any other anomalies matched what she was observing. Back on the freighter, she worked meticulously. She created a small, reinforced containment field using magnetic stabilization and energy damping modules. When she placed the jar inside, the vibrations decreased slightly, but the hum persisted. Over the next few hours, the anomalies grew more pronounced. Small objects around the freighter moved in subtle ways. Tiny lights flickered on their own. Even her own reflections in the freighter windows seemed to shimmer oddly, as though she were glimpsing a parallel layer of reality. Alara realized the jar might be communicating with the environment, not through words but through movement, energy, and subtle influence. It was learning. It was adapting. She also discovered that the anomalies were not limited to her freighter. Nearby systems on the station navigation arrays, energy conduits, even life support began showing irregular readings. Small glitches, brief and almost unnoticeable, appeared in areas connected to the station's core. It became clear the jar was affecting everything in proximity, not by force, but by influence. It could manipulate energy and matter in ways she could not fully understand. And if it could do this to a station, what could it do to an entire fleet? Alara knew she needed help. She reached out discreetly to a few trusted engineers and scientists aboard Orion's Spire. They agreed to assist. Intrigued by her findings, together, they began designing equipment to study the jar without allowing its influence to spread uncontrollably. During one experiment, a small probe they had placed near the jar began transmitting data that defied conventional science. The readings suggested shifts in space-time, miniature distortions that seemed to ripple outward in waves. Alara felt a thrill of excitement and fear. Humanity had encountered strange phenomena before, but this was something new, something alive in its own way. As the team worked, the jar pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Shadows formed on the walls, creating shapes that resembled figures watching them. Every experiment revealed more intelligence behind the seemingly simple object. It was aware, and it was observing them in return. Alara's thoughts drifted to the cashier's words. Curiosity is the first step to discovery. Perhaps the jar was a test of human curiosity and ingenuity. Perhaps it was waiting to see how humans would respond. Days passed. The anomalies continued to grow, subtle but undeniable. The station's engineers noticed odd behavior in maintenance robots. Traders reported small objects moving without explanation. Even the freighter systems occasionally showed brief, inexplicable glitches. Alara realized the situation could not continue indefinitely. If the jar's influence expanded, it could create chaos across the station or worse. She had to understand its origin, and she had to do it quickly. With her team assembled, she returned to the asteroid barn. The shop appeared empty again, but this time she was prepared. Sensors were active, and containment fields were ready. As she entered, she felt the hum grow stronger. It's almost as if the store itself recognized her. The shelves shifted slightly, revealing faint traces of movement beneath them. Tiny, glowing creatures moved between the gaps, observing her carefully. The environment was alive with energy, and it seemed to pulse in time with the jar she carried. Alara's heart raced. She had uncovered the first layer of the mystery. The asteroid barn was not just a store. It was a hub of hidden intelligence, carefully concealed, interacting with the human world in subtle ways. And the her 50 credit purchase was the key to understanding it all. She knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Whatever force or intelligence she had encountered would not remain contained forever. And humans, with their curiosity, ingenuity, and unpredictability to be the ones to confront it. Alara took a deep breath, gripping the jar tightly. The asteroid barn was never empty, she realized, and the galaxy beyond was about to find out just how resourceful humans could be. Alara Dune paced the small lab aboard her freighter, the hum of the Viridian starleaf jar filling the room. Every vibration, every flicker of light from the tiny container seemed to echo a hidden message, a signal she could not yet understand. The anomalies on Orion's spire had increased. Maintenance robots paused in mid-action, small tools shifted on benches, and the station's communication grids occasionally displayed strange symbols. She knew instinctively that the jar was only part of a much larger puzzle. The asteroid barn, the strange cashier, and the glowing traces she had seen all pointed to a secret that went beyond a simple shop. Alara had spent years traveling between systems, facing hazards most humans avoided, but nothing in her experience compared to the sense of intelligence radiating from this object. Alara decided to investigate the jar's origin more deeply. She had gathered readings from her sensors, scanning the faint energy waves, gravity distortions, and strange electromagnetic pulses surrounding it. All of it suggested a complex design, as if some alien intelligence had carefully hidden it within a seemingly ordinary object. Her first step was to return to the asteroid barn. She could not study the jar without knowing its source. As she approached the station sector, she noticed the area around the shop had grown eerily quiet. The usual hum of activity and chatter seemed muted. The doors of the barn appeared ordinary from the outside, but the glow inside was stronger than ever. Alara entered cautiously. Every instinct screamed that she was being observed. The shelves seemed alive, the floating objects spinning subtly as if following her movements. She carried a small handheld scanner, a device capable of detecting organic and inorganic life forms, as well as energy fluctuations. She swept the scanner across the room. The device beeped furiously near one shelf. Lara stepped closer and gasped. Tiny creatures, barely visible, scuttled across the surface of the shelf. They were insect-like, with translucent bodies that shimmered with light. Their movements were precise, coordinated, and clearly intelligent. "They're studying me," Alara whispered. The creatures paused when they detected her gaze, then retreated into small gaps and crevices. It became clear the asteroid barn was not a simple store. It was a hub for a hidden alien species, creatures capable of manipulating matter and energy on subtle levels. The jar had been a test, a tool to observe human behavior and perhaps measure curiosity and problem-solving skills. Alara needed more information. She activated a small portable data recorder and began scanning the room. She discovered faint energy patterns forming across the walls, almost like a network. The patterns pulsed in response to her movements. It was a communication system, a silent dialogue between the creatures and the environment. Suddenly, one of the small creatures approached the jar she carried. It hovered near the surface, and the hum intensified. Alara realized it was communicating through the energy emitted by the jar. Her curiosity and careful observation had activated a response. Her mind raced. If these creatures were capable of influencing machinery and electronics, could they also interact with larger systems? Could they manipulate entire ships, or even stations? The implications were staggering. Humanity relied on machines and networks for survival in space. A hidden intelligence capable of bending those systems could pose a significant threat. Alara stepped back. Considering her options, she had two choices: leave and report her findings, risking disbelief and possible disaster, or confront the hidden intelligence and learn what it wanted. Her curiosity won. Humans were resourceful, and she knew that even the most advanced alien intelligence could be outsmarted with ingenuity and unpredictability. She began setting up small experiments in the barn, using portable containment fields. She isolated the jar and observed how the creatures interacted with its energy. They moved deliberately, almost as if performing calculations. Tools shifted subtly in response to their movements. Shadows danced, forming patterns that hinted at intelligence far beyond normal understanding. Alara realized that the jar itself was a key, a connector between the creatures and the environment. It allowed them to extend their influence beyond the physical boundaries of the barn, small as it seemed. The 50-credit purchase was the bridge to a far-reaching intelligence. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden flicker of light. The air shimmered, and a section of the floor appeared to distort. A faint, portal-like shimmer formed near one wall. Ilara froze. The creatures scattered, and the energy pulsing from the jar intensified. "This is a gateway," she whispered. Her heart raced. The barn was not just a store or a hiding place. It was a gateway for an alien species capable of interacting with multiple layers of reality. And she had stumbled directly into their domain. Ilara activated a portable containment shield around herself and the jar. The creatures moved around it cautiously, as if aware of the barrier. She observed them for hours, documenting their behavior. They were highly intelligent, learning from her actions, and adapting quickly. The realization hit her hard. If the aliens were left unchecked, they could expand their influence to entire stations, fleets, or even planets. Their ability to manipulate matter and energy, combined with human reliance on technology, made them a hidden threat. But she also knew something vital. Humans had a unique edge. Their unpredictability, ingenuity, and problem-solving skills could outmatch even the most advanced intelligence if used wisely. Ilara spent days developing a strategy. She needed to learn as much as possible about the creatures, understand the scope of their abilities, and find a way to contain or repel them if necessary. She set up sensors to track energy fluctuations, movement, and behavioral patterns. The creatures adapted quickly, but she adapted faster. Each observation allowed her to predict their actions, to anticipate their responses, and to prepare countermeasures. Her work was interrupted by a sudden alert from the station. Nearby systems had detected unusual energy readings. Lights flickered and small objects shifted on their own. The creatures were extending their influence beyond the barn. Ilara realized the situation was escalating. She needed allies. She reached out discreetly to engineers and pilots she trusted, forming a small team capable of analyzing the anomaly and acting quickly if the creatures attempted to expand their influence further. Together, they began to develop tools and strategies. Portable shields, energy disruptors, and predictive algorithms allowed them to study the creatures safely. Lara led the team with quiet confidence, her human intuition guiding their actions. The aliens were intelligent, but humans had something they could not easily predict: creativity. As the team worked, Ilara's mind wandered back to the 50-credit purchase. A simple curiosity had led her to uncover a hidden intelligence capable of affecting entire systems. The lesson was clear: humans' natural curiosity and courage were their greatest strengths. Even in the face of unknown forces, ingenuity and adaptability could turn the tide. Days turned into weeks. The creatures in the barn continued to adapt, but Ilara and her team learned faster. They discovered that small, unpredictable actions disrupted the creatures' patterns. Subtle randomness, human intuition, and quick decision-making allowed them to stay one step ahead. One evening, Ilara stood alone in the barn, observing the creatures. They moved in coordinated patterns, but every so often, she noticed a tiny hesitation, a misstep. It was proof that, despite their intelligence, they were not infallible. Ilara smiled faintly. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and had always found a way. She could not allow fear to dictate her actions. Instead, she relied on the very qualities that had always defined humanity: curiosity, ingenuity, and courage. She placed the jar carefully into a reinforced containment field. The creatures hovered nearby, their glowing bodies reflecting on the metallic shelves. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the faint hum of the jar. Ilara knew this was only the beginning. The hidden threat had revealed itself, and humanity's encounter with it had begun. But she was ready. She had observed, learned, and adapted. And she knew that, even against a clever alien intelligence, humans had one advantage no machine or alien could easily overcome: unpredictability. With determination, she prepared her team for the next phase. The creatures were intelligent, subtle, and potentially dangerous. But humans had something they did not: resourcefulness, creativity, and the courage to face the unknown. Ilara looked at the jar and whispered, "You've chosen the right species to challenge." The hum pulsed in response. It was almost as if the jar had heard her words. The creatures in the barn shifted, moving carefully around the containment field, observing and learning. Ilara smiled faintly. The hidden threat was real, but humans were ready. She had uncovered the first layer of the mystery, and she was determined to see it through. The galaxy beyond Orion's spire held countless unknowns, but she trusted in humanity's ability to confront and adapt. For now, the barn remained calm. The creatures observed, the jar pulsed, and Ilara Dune, human explorer, merchant, and problem solver, prepared to face the challenge head-on. Confident that ingenuity, courage, and curiosity would guide her through whatever lay ahead. The hidden threat had revealed itself, and the stage was set for a T2. The desert winds had shifted overnight, carrying an electric tension that Kieran could feel in his bones. The sands seemed to hum with energy, as though the planet itself was whispering secrets to him. For weeks, he had worked tirelessly, uncovering panels, repairing conduits, and deciphering alien glyphs. Every small success brought the machine to life in tiny bursts. But now, Kieran knew he was ready for a greater test, the first. Full activation of a subsystem. He approached the largest control panel he had uncovered so far, its surface gleaming faintly under the rising sun. The symbols were complex, shifting subtly when he ran his fingers across them, responding to his touch. The interface was unlike anything he had ever seen. No alien engineer had left it easy. It demanded intuition, creativity, and daring the traits of a human mind. Kieran set to work, carefully testing sequences of symbols, making adjustments to the energy conduits, and cross-referencing the machine's patterns with his observations of the planet's subtle reactions. As he progressed, a soft vibration ran through the ground. The desert seemed to acknowledge his touch, reacting to the patterns he entered. Sand shifted gently around him, forming small ripples that mirrored the energy flows beneath. Hours passed, and Kieran felt the thrill of anticipation mingled with caution. The machine was powerful, far beyond anything he had encountered. One misstep could overload its circuits, or worse, trigger a destabilization of the planet's crust. But he had confidence in his human intuition, the ability to adapt, to improvise, and to act where others hesitated. Finally, he completed the sequence. The machine responded immediately. Lights flared along the panels, conduits hummed with energy, and tiny gears turned in harmony. A low-frequency vibration pulsed through the sand, echoing across the desert like a heartbeat. Kieran stepped back, watching as the first subsystem came alive. A holographic projection sprang to life above the panel. Images of the planet's past appeared, cities that had once thrived, forests that had stretched across continents, rivers and lakes that shimmered under alien suns. Kieran could see the history of Prime, a world of extraordinary design and intelligence. The machine was showing him what had been lost, and what could be restored. But it was not just history. The machine began to simulate the current state of the planet. Dried riverbeds shimmered with hints of water. Sand dunes shifted to reveal hidden reservoirs, and faint green glows indicated areas where life could be reborn. Kieran realized that this was more than a machinette, was a planetary caretaker, a system designed to restore balance to a world left to decay. As he studied the projection, Kieran felt a new understanding forming. The machine was not just responding to his actions, it was testing him. Each activation required precision, foresight, and creativity. The aliens who had built it had underestimated the potential of a human mind. No other species could unlock its systems in the way Kieran could. His ingenuity was not merely a tool, it was the key. The first activation also brought an unexpected challenge. Deep beneath the dunes, the machine's awakening sent subtle energy pulses across the desert. Kieran could see sand moving unnaturally, forming strange patterns and structures. It was beautiful, yet unpredictable. He realized that the desert itself had become part of the system, a living extension of the machine. Every action he took influenced not only the structure, but also the world around it. Kieran knew that his work had drawn attention. Far above the planet, sensors on alien scouting ships had detected the unusual energy surges. Across the dunes, scavengers and explorers stirred, drawn by curiosity and the promise of power. If they arrived too soon, they could seize the machine before it was fully understood. Kieran's challenge was not only to awaken the machine, but also to protect it until he could master it. The next days were a blur of careful adjustments and calculations. Kieran moved deeper into the structure, discovering hidden chambers filled with energy cores, rotating mechanisms, and conduits that carried immense power. Each chamber tested his skill and patience. Some required precise alignment of energy flows. Others demanded improvisation using tools he had crafted from scraps. Despite the challenges, Kieran made progress. Panels that had lain dormant for 117 years now glowed with steady energy. Conduits thrummed like arteries, carrying life-giving power through the machine. Holograms projected visions of cities rising from the sand, rivers flowing once again, and forests reclaiming deserts. Kieran saw the potential to reshape GalacticPrime, to bring life back to a world abandoned by its creators. But the machine was not finished testing him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a sudden surge of energy pulsed through the desert. The ground trembled, sending sand cascading down the dunes. Kieran gritted his teeth, adjusting conduits and rerouting energy flows to stabilize the system. The machine had sensed a flaw in his alignment and was demanding correction. Kieran's hands moved with precision, guided by instinct and experience. He adjusted the energy nodes, recalibrated the conduits, and synchronized the rotating gears. Slowly, the vibrations subsided and the system stabilized. The desert returned to calm, and Kieran realized he had passed the first true test. The machine recognized his skill, and the first spark of its full potential had been ignited. The success brought both triumph and awe. Kieran stood on a ridge overlooking the awakened section of the machine, watching as sand shifted to reveal hidden terraces and structures. The desert seemed to glow with energy, and a faint hum resonated across the dunes. GalacticPrime was beginning to awaken, responding to human ingenuity in ways no other species could have imagined. Kieran knew this was only the beginning. The first subsystem was operational, but the machine was vast, complex, and far from fully activated. There were still chambers to explore, conduits to repair, and energy nodes to balance. And beyond the dunes, alien scavengers were surely preparing to descend. Drawn by the same energy that had awakened the machine, yet Kieran felt no fear. Humans were capable of ingenuity and courage unmatched by any other species. He had faced isolation, harsh deserts, and challenges that would have defeated others. The machine had chosen him, and he was ready to prove that one human could achieve what entire civilizations had failed to do. That night, Kieran camped near the base of the machine, listening to the hum of energy and the whisper of the desert wind. He reviewed his work, planning the next steps. He would need to stabilize more subsystems, decipher the remaining glyphs, and prepare for the challenges ahead. The desert was no longer empty. It was alive, responsive, and filled with potential. As he drifted to sleep, Kieran felt a deep connection to the planet and the machine. He realized that this was more than a discovery, it was a partnership. The machine was teaching him, guiding him, and recognizing his skill. And GalacticPrime, silent for over a century, had begun to respond to a single human touch. The first spark had been ignited. Lights flared, gears turned, and the hum of energy carried across the desert like a song. Kieran knew that the path ahead would be difficult, that dangers and challenges awaited. But he also understood something vital. The combination of human ingenuity, courage, and patience could awaken what no other species could touch. In the silence of the desert, Kieran looked toward the horizon. The dunes shifted in response to the machine's pulse. The stars above reflected the faint glow of energy spreading across the sands. GalacticPrime was waking, and one human mechanic had begun a journey that could change the fate of an entire world. The first spark was more than a light. A promise that humans, with their creativity and daring, could shape the destiny of planets, awaken ancient powers, and achieve feats no one else could imagine. Kieran smiled, ready for the next challenge. The desert, the machine, and the planet itself awaited his next move. And one human, against all odds, was about to show the galaxy what it meant to dare to create, and to awaken giants that had slept for more than a century. The desert was alive with movement that Kieran alone could sense. Every step he took toward the half-buried machine brought him closer to answers he did not yet fully understand. CosmicAdventures was not merely a world of sand and silence, it was a graveyard of civilizations, each leaving behind relics, messages, and secrets. And buried deep beneath the dunes was a machine older than any memory, waiting for someone clever enough to awaken it. Kieran had spent days uncovering the edges of the alien structure, brushing away centuries of sand and dust. The more he revealed, the more he realized the sheer size of what lay before him. Massive panels engraved with intricate symbols stretched across what seemed like hundreds of meters. Conduits and pipes snaked into the depths of the dunes, and hidden vents whispered faint pulses of energy. The machine was a city in itself, built not just to function, but to survive for centuries unattended. With a deep breath, Kieran activated a small power analyzer. Tiny lights flickered along the surface of the machine, responding to the scan. The energy readings were faint, scattered across multiple nodes, but unmistakably alive. This machine was not dead, it was dormant, and it was waiting for a human touch. Kieran knelt to examine one of the smaller panels. Tracing the glowing alien glyphs with his fingers, he could feel a subtle vibration under his palms, as if the machine recognized him, or perhaps tested him. Most alien technology had been designed for precision, but this device seemed to challenge logic, demanding creativity and intuition. Kieran smiled. Humans thrived where others failed, and he intended to prove it. For the next several hours, he worked tirelessly. He patched small breaks in conduits, adjusted misaligned gears, and improvised with scraps from his pack. Each minor success was a small victory, but Kieran knew the real test lay deeper inside the machine. It was one thing to awaken a single panel. It was another to bring an entire system back to life after 117 years of silence. As he worked, Kieran uncovered fragments of alien history hidden within the machine. Holographic projectors flickered to life, showing images of cities long buried in beings that moved with grace and intelligence. The aliens had built CosmicAdventures as a planetary stabilizer, a machine to regulate ecosystems, control weather, and maintain balance. But centuries of abandonment had left it incomplete, its systems silent. Waiting for a hand that could understand both logic and intuition, Kieran realized the significance of what he held in his hands. This machine was not merely a tool. It was a legacy, a proof that intelligence could endure long after civilizations vanished. And for the first time, he understood why it had remained buried, untouched, and forgotten. No alien species had the patience or creativity to unlock it. Only a human, with ingenuity and daring, could awaken it. The days passed in a blur of effort. Kieran became one with the machine, moving through its panels, learning its rhythm, and listening to the subtle hums that spoke in a language of energy and vibration. Occasionally, small tremors shook the dunes, and Kieran realized the machine was responding to his work in ways he could feel in the soles of his boots. The desert was awakening, along with the giant beneath it. But Kieran was not alone in his discovery. Far beyond the dunes, other eyes watched the desert, sensing the faint surge of power. Alien scavengers from nearby colonies had long learned to detect unusual energy sources. When a system that had been dormant for over a century began to stir, they could not ignore it. They would come, drawn by curiosity, greed, and the hope of harnessing power beyond their understanding. For now, however, Kieran had the desert to himself. He dug deeper into the structure, uncovering hidden access tunnels and chambers filled with machinery. Each discovery was more astonishing than the last, rotating mechanisms that defied his expectations, conduits that glowed with pure energy, and panels that projected holograms of long-lost cities. The machine seemed alive, guiding him, teaching him, challenging him to solve puzzles no other being could. One night, under the vast canopy of stars, Kieran paused to rest. The desert wind carried a strange, almost musical vibration, as if the planet itself were singing in response to the machine. He closed his eyes and listened, feeling a connection he could not fully explain. It was as if the sands, the dunes, and the buried structure shared a single heartbeat, and he had become part of it. He thought about the alien civilizations that had once thrived on Prime. They had been brilliant, advanced beyond measure, yet they had failed to see what a human could do. They had built a machine too complex for their own kind, leaving it dormant and forgotten. Kieran, alone and persistent, was beginning to unlock its potential. By the following morning, he had uncovered a series of control panels arranged like a constellation across the structure. Each panel seemed to correspond to a subsystem: energy regulation, environmental control, and structural stabilization. Kieran examined the symbols and patterns, trying combinations and sequences, careful not to trigger a failure. Slowly, methodically, he began to activate smaller sections. Lights flickered, tiny gears spun, and conduits hummed with energy. The first partial activation brought unexpected changes to the desert. Sand shifted and rose in unusual patterns. Winds swirled with a new rhythm. Kieran realized that the machine's power extended beyond its physical structure, influenced the planet itself. Each system he activated brought subtle signs of life and movement to the barren world as he worked. He noticed that the machine seemed to respond to human logic in a way it had never responded to alien thought. Panels opened when he touched them in precise sequences. Energy flows stabilized when he made intuitive adjustments. Kieran's hands moved with confidence, guided by knowledge, instinct, and creativity. He understood that the machine had been designed to challenge its user, to reward ingenuity and to reveal its secrets only to one who dared to try. But Kieran also understood the stakes. The machine's dormant power was immense, capable of reshaping the planet or destroying it if misused. One mistake could collapse the entire system or trigger catastrophic reactions. He moved carefully, aware that he carried the fate of Prime in his hands. The desert, silent witness to his efforts, seemed to hold its breath. As days turned into weeks, Kieran's work began to yield astonishing results. Hidden chambers opened, revealing energy cores and structural reinforcements. Ancient conduits, long blocked by sand and corrosion, began to channel energy once more. Holographic projections displayed the history of Prime and the civilizations that had built it. Kieran watched in awe as the stories of brilliant engineers, architects, and visionaries unfolded before him. He realized that he was not merely restoring a machine, he was reconnecting with a forgotten world. One evening, a particularly strong vibration ran through the dunes. Kieran looked up to see a faint shimmer across the horizon. He knew the machine was testing him, gauging his patience, skill, and determination. It was alive in a way he had never experienced, responding to human ingenuity with subtle acknowledgments. He smiled, understanding that he had become part of its rhythm, its purpose, and its awakening. Kieran's isolation no longer felt like loneliness. The desert, the machine, and the faint stirrings of the planet had become his companions. Every day brought new discoveries, challenges, and small victories. He knew that the full potential of the machine was still far from reach. But he also understood something important. One human, clever, patient, and daring, could achieve what entire civilizations had failed to do. The story of Prime was far from over. Beneath the sands, the ancient machine lay ready to respond to the next step. Kieran, with his skill, courage, and human intuition, was prepared to take it. The desert stretched endlessly around him, a sea of gold under the starlit sky. The half-buried giant pulsed with life beneath the dunes, waiting. And one human, alone but undaunted, had begun to unlock its secrets, setting in motion a chain of events that would reshape the world itself. The awakening had begun. The sands whispered promises of wonders yet to come.